Good evening. I'm Connie Romanis with the League of Women Voters and would like to welcome all of you for coming out tonight to listen to the candidates. The League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria and the Peoria Public Library are sponsoring this candidate forum this evening. Today we'll be hearing from the candidates who are running for Village Board Trustee. There are 4 candidates. We have 2 with us this evening. One candidate was unexpectedly extended out of town through work and not able to join us. I want to tell you a little bit about the League and our candidate forums. We're a nonpartisan organization, and we endorse no candidates nor favor any political party. The League's purpose is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. Providing for this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for verifying the accuracy of the statement the candidates make in this forum. Tonight, this forum is rather unusual for us to hold because we usually only run contested races, but we made a commitment, and some of you may have been aware that this forum had been scheduled and canceled and rescheduled, and with one candidate not being able to be here, we felt we owed it to your community and to these candidates who toughed it out and stayed with us. So we are proud to have this forum tonight. The League does take positions on issues after an in-depth study. Certainly once a specific position is taken, it may appear partisan to some because they don't necessarily agree with the position taken. But again, the League never takes a position or endorses political candidates. It's a membership organization. We're volunteers, so we're only as strong as our members. If you're not a member, please consider joining us. We held, this is our 6th forum this election season, and we've had some great turnouts. So we're glad to see you here, but consider joining us. And the folks leading you at the table had some literature, and some of you may have picked it up. We hope you come away from this forum with the knowledge about these candidates and their positions. Providing voter education is a major part of what the League provides. And you can view this forum and others by going to the YouTube channel for the League of Women Voters of Greater Peoria. For more information about voting and positions of candidates on the ballot coming up in April, please go to illinoisvoterguide.org, and I believe there are some cards on the table with that designation. So I'm going to turn this over to our moderator, Russ Crawford.
Thank you, Connie. Good evening. Allow me to join Connie in welcoming you and tonight's candidates for the position of Peoria Heights Trustee. We have Brandon Wiseburg to my immediate left and Beth Khazzam to his left. Earlier we played poker and Brandon won. And so Brandon will go first when we get to opening statement, and Beth will follow. And then later when we have closing statement, we'll reverse it. So Beth will go first for closing and Brandon will go second. A couple of comments to the audience. Please turn off your cell phones. That's one of those things where it probably won't go off, but if it does, you wish that it didn't, and you wish you weren't here, and you try to run away. So turn those things off. Next, please do not applaud, because even though you support one of the candidates or even both, it takes time away from the answers, and we've got limited time. Next, the candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement when we get to that soon. And then on each question, there'll be 1.5 minutes for each one to answer those questions. And then when we go to closing, it'll be 1 minute. So it's sort of quick closing. We do have timers. Wave your paddles. There they are. And we'll hold up the panels to indicate how many seconds remain. And then the scary stop paddle, which means stop talking. We have question collectors in the room. Where are they? There they are. And they'll collect your written questions, although I gotta say they've done a great job already. And they've given me a ton here, a ton more than I had before. So we're good. I was worried that it would be a short meeting, but that's going on. And also, if you did suggest bring a question, for example, I have like 3 or 4 on crime in Peoria Heights. So I probably won't go to all 3 or 4 of those in Peoria Heights. So if your question doesn't get read, it's not that Russ doesn't like you. It's simply that I try to merge or edit or to get everything done as quick as we can. Also, and I don't think anybody did this, but if you address your question just to one of the candidates, that we're not going to follow that. I'll ask that same question of all the candidates, so they'll get a shot. And also to you guys, if you have any questions about my question, please just say, hey, can you repeat that, or ask whatever you want to ask, and I'll go through it again. So, because my wife tells me I'm not always clear. Okay. So with that, I think it's time for opening statements, and we will start with Brandon for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Brandon Wiseburg, and I'm running for re-election as village trustee here in the village of Peoria Heights. My family moved to the village in the early 90s. I grew up in the Longshore subdivision below the bluff. I met my wife, who's here with me tonight, a few doors down from where we grew up. We later married and are raising 3 children here in the village. Our children attend community schools here in the village of Peoria Heights. Go Patriots. First elected to public office in 2019. It has been an unprecedented term. Within a year of getting elected, COVID hit and the world seemed to stop. I think it was 3 years ago today that the governor ordered the state shut down the following Monday. Despite these difficulties, we've accomplished a lot in the last 4 years. With my focus on the Peoria Heights community, I voted to improve parks, focus on public safety, adding police officers. I provided central funding to the fire department, and the first time in our history, we hired a part-time fire chief and a full-time fire assistant chief to support the department needs during the day. We developed infrastructure plans to address our aging infrastructure and started saving for our capital needs. The village has also made great strides in catching up with our Illinois mandated police pension funding levels. And we did all this while lowering the property tax levy in the village of Peoria Heights, almost unheard of in local government. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. Beth?
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Khazzam, and first of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity this evening to address questions from the audience and people at home as well, and also introduce ourselves to the constituents. I am a resident of the village of Peoria Heights. I have been for the last 20-some years. I have 3 children who now are raised and gone, unfortunately. But my husband and I love this community, and hopefully they will choose to come back to the village of Peoria Heights at some point. I've been serving as village trustee in the capacity overseeing economic development for the last 4 years, and I'm running as an incumbent to serve for the next 4 years. As my fellow trustee Brandon Wiseburg said, we've addressed a lot of issues in the last 4 years despite the hurdles of COVID. Specifically speaking, in economic development, we have actually increased our sales tax revenue by over 25% in the last 4 years, and that money directly goes to fighting crime. We've hired 2 extra police officers, making a total of 16 right now. We have been addressing the fire, which has been a hot topic in the village of Peoria Heights. We've been able to pay for, just as Trustee Wiseburg said, full-time and part-time position. We're addressing infrastructure. We just have embarked on a water capital plan with Woodward and Curran, because water is a hot topic in our community, as we all know. And we have been very successful in receiving grants to address both the Route 29 project and Prospect Road. I think that's all I have to say until someone else has a question.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And keep the microphone because you go first on the first question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You actually covered in those opening statements what some of the sort of successes were, if you will, of the Peoria Heights Council. So this is a little bit like that, but it's about what you've done. And it says Peoria Heights trustee, as an incumbent who's been there, 4 years, what do you consider your top 3 accomplishments or achievements?
Well, as I mentioned, I feel very fortunate to serve under a mayor like Mayor Phelan. I think he's very good at identifying the different strengths in the 6 trustees, and he put me in charge of economic development because my background, that's my background. As I mentioned previously, we have raised, not property tax, but sales tax revenue over 25%, even despite the hurdle of COVID. And that money directly goes to infrastructure, police, safety, fire, and those types of things. So that is an enormous hurdle, an enormous accomplishment, I think, for anyone in that position underneath those circumstances. Also, I'm very focused on the community. We've been working with the St. Thomas RoboCops. We'll be installing a new accessible playground in Tower Park in the next month. And I've been working very closely with IDOT on Route 29.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Brandon, the top 3 achievements or accomplishments.
Sure, thanks, Russ. I would say the top 3, in no particular order, would be lowering the property tax levy. We all know that property taxes in Illinois are some of the most burdensome in the entire nation. We've worked hard to balance budgets and be good fiscal stewards of public money. So lowering the property tax levy was quite an accomplishment. We've improved parks, as Trustee Khazzam recently mentioned. We'll soon break ground on an inclusive park to where children of all physical abilities will be able to play with their peers, which I believe is very important for our community. And the third thing I would say is that when we hired fire chief, when we got elected, we had a lot of difficulties with daytime availability and being there to ensure that we were safeguarding the community with fire protection. So we hired a fire chief, and I'm glad to say that is no longer a concern of mine. Thank you.
Thank you. So you'll keep the mic, and by the way, that's the drill throughout the night, since there's 2 candidates, so you'll follow yourself each time. So the next question is, this is sort of a specialized, it's water issue. What steps do you think can be taken now about the Peoria Heights water issue?
Well, that is quite the topic. Water has been a topic since we first got elected. I think the issues have always been there, but I think with people being home during the pandemic, the issues were more noticed. We recently hired a company to develop a capital plan to begin investing in our aging infrastructure. Some of our water mains are over 100 years old. Here in the short term, we're going to start doing a process. I know the name sounds funny, but it's called ice pigging. And it's when you take a water and ice and you run it through the mains to break up some of the sediment that causes the groundwater issues. And then as we discuss the capital plan and get the capital funding in place, we're going to start to institute filtering and the replacement of the water infrastructure. It won't be a quick process. This system's been on the ground for 100 years, but we have the capital plan. We have the right people in place, and it has been a top priority of the village board.
Thank you, Brandon. Elizabeth, do you need me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay.
So as Trustee Wiseburg stated, this is one of our top concerns and issues at the village level, and obviously for all of the residents. I think the question is really asking what can be done immediately, and I'm not sure that something can be done immediately, unfortunately. This is an area that has been probably not paid attention to as closely as it should have been in the last decades, but I think that this particular board is taking the major and first steps to actually address it from a very broad scope. So we, as I said, we hired Woodard and Kern, and actually in the upcoming week, there will be 2 meetings at Village Hall for residents of Peoria Heights to understand the capital campaign. And in addition to that, we are addressing separately the lead pipe remediation and the issues on 29 and throughout the Heights as well. So we have also hired Wayne Aldrich, who's a consultant with grant applications, and he's helped us to identify different grant possibilities in order to pay for this infrastructure, which will be a very expensive issue.
Thank you. So again, Beth, it'll be back to you. This next question is economic development. Most village TIF districts, TIF districts, and business overlay districts, they have common large areas which include residences. Can you hear me okay, or do I need to use the mic? Most people always hear me okay. So the question is, under what conditions would you vote to use eminent domain, which is taking by the government of private property? And I know that really well because my family was Crawford Shoe Stores, and the Peoria Civic Center is where our shoe store was. And we didn't give it up. It was taken by the city. So eminent domain is important to assist in the development in these areas. So would you vote for eminent domain, forget my story, for Peoria Heights in any category? And explain, if you would, when you would. Thank you.
Well, firstly, the tax increment financing zones have been deliberately zoned to include housing in the village of Peoria Heights. We have identified that the housing stock needs to be improved, and we have a large rental percentage in our village. So we did that deliberately in order to help the residents and homeowners. We have applied for grants and just received a HUD grant, which will soon be rolled out. We'll be able to identify or address 10 to 12 homes in chunks to see if they can have to identify like heating, roofing, windows, that type of thing. But going back to your question of eminent domain, I think that it would be very difficult for me as a candidate and trustee to see myself voting for eminent domain in order for big development. Overseeing economic development, I do believe in big development because sales tax is very important to the village. That's what we survive on. But to take someone's home, I think we have enough land in our village to accommodate that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Brandon?
I'll echo Trustee Khazzam's comments on the benefits of the TIF district, but to answer the question regarding eminent domain, I don't like to speak in absolutes, but I think in this case I will. Absolutely not. I think eminent domain, I believe from how I understand it, was originally developed in the United States to aid in the constructions of highways and interstates. I think it's often misused. So no, I would not vote to take anyone's property.
Thank you, Brandon. Okay, and Brandon, we're back to you again. This is one sort of still on economic development, infrastructure improvements. So what infrastructure improvements does Peoria Heights need, in your opinion, and how should they be paid for?
The infrastructure improvements that are needed in the village of Peoria Heights probably, in my mind, start with the water infrastructure. Water infrastructure traditionally is paid for by the water rates. The water company operates as a separate entity within village government. So the water rates should incorporate not only the maintenance of the infrastructure, but also the filtration, et cetera. The next would be sidewalks and curbs and street maintenance, which every town has to budget for. The village of Peoria Heights is almost exclusively funded by sales tax revenue. When we first got elected, there was no capital improvement line item. We started funding that to the tune of $250,000. So the answer is to continue to grow our sales tax revenue, budget, and save for infrastructure improvements.
Thank you.
Do you mind repeating the question?
Yes. It's infrastructure improvements is the subject. And it says, what infrastructure improvements does Peoria Heights need, in your opinion, Elizabeth, and how should they be paid for?
Okay. Well, there are quite a few, water being, I think, one of the top, but also curb and gutter, lead remediation, and sidewalks. There are probably more that I'm not thinking of right now. How should we pay for them? Sales tax revenue, that's how we should pay for them. Also grant opportunities. As Trustee Wiseburg said, we have a line item for capital improvements, $250,000 on that line item. But last week as well, we just had our budget report and we have $1 million in there, which is quite a feat considering that not 6 years ago it was difficult. We were in a totally different situation. So we're going to have going forward a much better opportunity to identify some of these projects and put the money toward them. And I think we all agree predominantly on these different areas. I want to speak for you. I just caught myself.
In that case, you can.
I just caught myself.
In that case.
Okay, thank you very much. Quick one. This is on residency requirement. It says, should trustees live in the community? It's, obviously by law, you gotta live where you run, where you live. But it says, must trustees live in the community 50% or 100% of the time? I think this is a dig at snowbirds. I'm not sure. And why? And so we're gonna.
I start with
yes,
that one.
right.
Well, first of all, it is a requirement to be a resident of the community where you're serving. So I definitely support that. I also think that the person serving should be living in your community more than 50% of the time, if not up to 80% of the time. I do live and reside here at least 80% of the time. Like I mentioned previously, I have 3 grown children and my husband works in another state. He actually works in Florida, but he travels back and forth, and I have been able to accommodate that as well. And I feel very important. I feel very strongly that, that this is an amazing community and that I'm proud to be part of it, and it's my home and it always will be.
Thanks, Brandon. Thank you, Elizabeth. Brandon?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So it's a sort of a short one. I made it too long. Residency requirement. So should trustees live in the community? You have to live there, but could they live 50% of the time rather than 100% of the time? Or less than 100% of the time? Let's put it that way.
I think the residency requirement, as I understand it, is that we live in the community. So I would just default to 100% of the time. I love this community. I spend a lot of time here. I leave to go fishing. Wish I didn't have to. Wish there was a lake here in the village of Peoria Heights, but we do most of our dining here. We do most of our shopping, save a lot of fuel. So yeah, if I had to default to an answer, I would say 100% of the time.
Thank you. Brandon, we'll stay with you. And this is one that just came in, and it's longer and it's very specific, so I'll read it word for word. What specifically in your background, your private sector background, and it says not political, has been your strongest attribute that you feel qualifies you to serve on the Board of Trustees and serve the citizens of Peoria Heights?
Sure, thanks, Russ. That's a great question. For the last 25 years, I've worked for a local nonprofit that specializes in caring. Well, let me back up. So I think a lot of the roles as a trustee is engaging constituents, understanding what their needs are, and caring for their needs in the community, and making sure that the work we do at the village table reflects the actual needs and the human capital, if you will, of our citizens. For the last 25 years, I've worked for a local nonprofit that specializes in caring for older adults. I work in the information technology sector, but I've always been drawn to that mission of caring for older adults. So I think that human aspect and being able to engage with citizens, even though I am an introvert, I avoid crowds if I can, oddly enough. But working with the nonprofit, I've had a lot of experience with interacting with a lot of different people and just helping them live the best life that they can. So I draw on that experience when I serve here on the village board.
Thanks, Brandon. Elizabeth, do you want me to repeat it?
Sure.
Okay. What specifically in your background, private sector, non-political, has been your strongest attribute that you feel qualifies you to both serve on the Board of Trustees and serve the citizens of Peoria Heights?
Well, I think that I would quickly lean toward my experience redeveloping Junction City with my husband. When we purchased that, probably 12, well, we owned it for 12 years, and we reassembled those properties, eliminating the crime that was happening in those areas, and then redeveloping the whole area, both from a historic perspective, but also increasing sales tax. That is why I'm sure the mayor put me under economic development, because that's my background. So I think that is one major reason, one major asset that I bring to the table. Additionally, I'm a local. I mean, even though I wasn't born in the village of Peoria Heights, I was born in Peoria. I've lived here almost my entire life, with the exception of going away to college and a brief stint with my husband before we moved back here. I'm a Midwesterner at heart. I feel that I know the people that I live around. I love the community, and I've served on many other boards in my life, Boys and Girls Club. I've been involved in my church, all those things. And I think this type of human fabric connection with my fellow neighbors and residents helps me to serve them.
Thank you. Okay, Beth, we'll stay with you. New question. This is on village services. You guys have served for 4 years, so you really know what the level of services is currently for Peoria Heights to the residents. So the question is, do you think are there any village services that are not offered that should be, or are there any village services that ought to be expanded because the service is there, but it needs to be bigger or better? If so, how would you pay for that, either the new service or the expanded service? And then finally, are there any services that you think either could be reduced or eliminated?
Well, that's a big question.
It's all on service.
Well, I think that we have an amazing, our community does an amazing job already with services. I think we have a great public works department. Obviously, we've been talking about the water that needs to be addressed, but as far as the labor and the attention that's given to residents, I feel very strongly that they do a wonderful job. We have an amazing park system. The Peoria Park District is the second largest in the state, but a good part of that falls within our community, both Peoria Park District and parks that our own village is responsible for. I think that's an amazing asset/service that we offer our residents. If there's any service that the residents believe that we can improve upon, I would hope that they would contact us directly, because we would love to know what that is so that we can address that.
Thank you,
And
Elizabeth.
I think we know how we have to pay for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we've talked about that a few times.
Yeah.
Sales tax.
Brandon, you need me to repeat it?
Please.
Okay. It's village services, and it's basically, are there any that we don't have that you want to add? Are there any that we have that you want to expand? And if you do either one of those, how do you pay for it? And then while you're at it, in terms of budget priority, is there any services that you think we can either reduce or quit providing?
I think the goal or the objective or the necessity of local government is to provide the core services, so fire, police, street, and some municipalities provide water, others don't, but in our case, water. We run a very lean ship in the village of Peoria Heights. Property taxes are, in my opinion, at least the village's portion of it, pretty low. We levy just over $500,000 a year in property taxes. So when I think about increasing services, the only revenue we're guaranteed, if you will, is property taxes. Sales tax can vary depending on the economic conditions. So no, I wouldn't want to, I think, grow the size of the village government any, because I think we do provide the fire, police, and public works quite efficiently. And if any of our citizens ever have any issues with public services or police or fire, I've always been very responsive to those needs and have worked to address any issues that come up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, new question, Brandon. So this is sort of economic development. The KDB group left sort of the Peoria Heights. It was working with the mayor and the village board on a major project. And so the question is, how does that affect the village now with that departure? And also, if there was property that was acquired or managed that was part of that, what do you do with that now?
Sure, great question. I'll start off by kind of carrying the flag of Peoria Heights. The village of Peoria Heights was great before Kim Blickenstaff came into the picture. It'll be great afterwards. So I don't have any concerns about our future. This computer I work in. This community is second to none. So the weird thing about Kim Blickenstaff is he was in the picture, had purchased cash purchases, from what I understand, all of his properties, was kind of out of the picture by mid-2019. I've not even personally met the guy. But all the properties that he had purchased, he didn't request any public money, nor am I aware of him receiving any public money for those purchases. My hope is that he'll sell them so we can continue being the great community we've always been. But those were private property transactions. My understanding is he paid cash. Why he set on these developments, I've never met him to ask, but it seems strange. But my hope is that he will sell those properties so that we can continue doing what we do best, and being the greatest community in Central Illinois.
Thanks, Brandon. Elizabeth?
I echo what Trustee Wiseburg says. We are fortunate that we did not enter into any TIP agreements with Mr. Blickenstaff. As Brandon says, he paid cash for all of his properties. I would say, as stressful and troubling as it was that he ended up leaving the community abruptly, in the last probably 6 months, there's been a lot more movement with his properties. I personally am working very closely with KDB and another developer to potentially bring a hotel to the community, and I hope that that works out. But he is more interested. There is more interest in selling or partnering with some of these properties, which is a wonderful thing. Additionally, he had some interest in the pump house that was never sold to him. It was a lease. The benefit that the village got from that was that they paid to completely renovate the interior of that building, a building that we still own. There's currently a tenant in there, but I think that we have plans now to create either to get another tenant or we're coming up on our 125th anniversary of the Village of Peoria Heights, and I'm actually chairing the historic aspect of that. So hopefully we'll have a permanent history exhibit in there. And I'm very excited to see the development going forward because we have a lot of developers interested in our community that want to take over those positions.
Thank you. Next question, handicap. Are Peoria Heights business sidewalks handicap accessible in your opinion? And if not, will this be corrected in the future?
I think that some of them are. You can see that there's improvement in some areas, but yes, that is one of our infrastructure issues that we are looking at as a village. We take connectivity in all ways very seriously. It's something we're looking at all the time. So whether that's handicap accessibility on sidewalks, getting children to school from their homes, walkability in that way, or also multi-use trails. So you're going to see a lot of that coming in the next 4 years.
Thank you. Brandon?
Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, sure. It's on handicap sidewalks. Are those Peoria Heights business sidewalks handicap accessible in your view? And if not, will this be corrected in the future?
Thank you. I think a lot of the sidewalks were probably developed before ADA requirements became law. I know moving forward, any projects that get public money or any redevelopment, they're required to adhere to ADA requirements. So some of our sidewalks are clearly ADA compliant, some aren't. I know we lack a lot of, or some handicap parking. I know we have some, but nearly not enough. So as we move forward and we develop plans for Prospect, and as businesses come into the Village of Peoria Heights and redevelop, we are looking at that. Had a question here recently about tequilas, actually about whether their ramps were ADA compliant. We've worked with them to ensure that they are. So, thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you already answered that, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just forgot to,
Was it memorable?
circle your number. I used to be an auditor, so we're anal, you know? Okay, another question. And this is, I've got 3 on crime. I'm trying to figure out how to combine them all. In Peoria Heights. It says basically crime in the greater Peoria area is on the rise, carjackings, shootings, burglaries, not necessarily Peoria Heights, but close. So basically, what are you doing in Peoria Heights to keep the crime low or even make it lower?
Yes, sometimes I think we're the eye of the storm. I think, it's all around us. And all we can do is, push on it to keep it out. Crime is a serious issue. If you read the news or watch the paper or read the paper, it's hard to go a night without violent crime occurring in the greater Peoria area. I know the success of Peoria Heights is dependent on us maintaining a safe community. Most people I talk to, one of the first things they say is they feel safe walking in the Village of Peoria Heights. I know I do. We have voted to increase police officers. We have 16 police officers, and for a town of our size, that's quite a lot. I think police presence is a good deterrent to crime. For a small town, our ticket and call volume rivals most of the towns our size in Peoria County. Crime is very important. I think keeping crime low is paramount to our success. So I know we're going to be looking at adding additional police officers in the future. But I think active police presence, patrols, having that law enforcement presence has worked in the past. And hopefully we can continue to improve upon our successes and hopefully lower crime.
Thank you, Brandon. Elizabeth, repeat.
Yeah, no, but that's fine. I echo what Trustee Wiseburg said. Obviously, safety is paramount to any community. So many people come from other parts of the area and say they feel safe coming here at night, that they allow their children to walk up to get ice cream from their homes, that type of thing. It's on all of our minds as residents and also trustees. As Brandon said, we have supported extra police. I would call it extra. We have 16 police officers in our community, and as he just said as well, comparing our community to other communities of the same size, we have more police officers than those other communities. Additionally, I think that having a very vibrant downtown and Main Street is helpful. More people on the street means more safety, in my opinion. I think that when you, especially in a restaurant area, that you wouldn't want to have not very many people in the street. It's scary for individuals to walk. So I think that that's very helpful. I also think that our police are very good about patrolling different areas in the community.
Thank you. Brandon, or I'm sorry, we're staying with Beth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
You can call Beth.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer Elizabeth, but everybody calls me Beth.
That's because we're lazy. Anyway, Elizabeth's a beautiful name. Do you think that, this is an easy, quick one. Do you think the noise ordinance in Peoria Heights, which currently I think is 10 o'clock, do you think that ought to be moved up, moved back, or eliminated, or stay the same?
So this is a question actually that I've gotten going door to door in our communities lately. And I've heard all kinds of different things. I think that right now our ordinance is a 10 o'clock termination of noise, but we've allowed bands to play until 11 o'clock in the summer. I think it's important, there are two sides of this. Obviously, no resident wants to be sitting in their house at 9 o'clock in the evening, 10 o'clock in the evening, and not be able to hear their television or, be troubled by this noise coming from the bars and restaurants on Prospect. So I'm very sympathetic to that. At the same time, I think that, the having bands shut down at 10 is a little bit early. I think 11 o'clock is more reasonable when usually these bands start around 8 or 8:30 or 9. So I think that I know that we've talked about this at a trustee level, and I hope that we will be able to find a happy medium, potentially being able to lower the volume, patrol these restaurants and bars more in the summer months. But that's, I see both sides of that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Russ. Thanks for the question. I support the ordinance how it's currently written. I believe it's 6 a.m., maybe 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I think regardless of the time, I think it's unreasonable to expect a citizen who's sitting in their house to have to put up with music that blocks down the street. I think one of our responsibilities here in the village of Peoria Heights is to protect the safety and peace of our community. I would not ask a resident to endure something I would not myself endure, and I would not appreciate my neighbor playing music so loud that it interferes with my family. So no, I support the ordinance as it's written. And I think I worry about micromanaging the bars and venues in the Heights, because it takes police officers off the patrols. It takes police officers off keeping that violent crime out. So as Beth has said, we have had discussions with that, and I hope soon to start addressing some of those.
Thank you, Brandon. The next is emergency orders. Throughout the COVID and pandemic, you saw governors across the nation and mayors, a lot of mayors in Illinois, go to what we call emergency orders, where they sort of took a little bit more authority than they were really had before. So the question is, how long should a mayor really be able to retain these emergency orders? And at what point should the village board step in and say, okay, that's enough?
I absolutely love this question because this came up. Right at the start of the COVID pandemic, all the local towns, mayors, were starting to pass these ordinances that essentially allowed the mayor to lock you in your house. Not only could they lock you in the house, they could stop the egress and they could stop you from coming and going from your house. I was the only trustee that voted against that ordinance. It wasn't that I didn't trust Mayor Phelan. It was just that I didn't believe that any official should have the authority to say if I can come and go from my own house. The ordinance, how it was written, is that the mayor could enact these emergency rules until the next board meeting. It wasn't really clear on how quickly, or maybe it was within 48 hours. But no, I didn't understand. One, the governor already had probably the authority to lock you in your house if he wanted to. So I didn't think it really made sense to duplicate that power. And I just thought it was inappropriate.
Thanks, Brandon. Elizabeth? Emergency, you want to repeat it?
No, it's fine,
Okay.
I think. Well, I mean, in that aspect, hopefully we never go back to that. But I think that I'm for limited government in that respect of locking people in their homes. I don't really see it. I don't know if there are different perspectives on that as far as contaminating, others, keeping others healthy that are around you. But I believe in limited government on that.
Thank you. The last question, and then we'll go to our 1-minute closing statements. So this is the last question prior to that. Would that fit, Connie? Thanks. And this is sort of wordy, but it's not really that hard. So it's on affordable housing in Peoria Heights. So it says, depending upon the source, the median income in Peoria Heights is between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. A village policy has resulted in developments with $2,000 a month rent and $300,000 to $400,000 condos within the city. So the question is, what policy should the village of Peoria Heights institute to develop homes that the median income will support?
Well, I think that you're seeing this addressed in all categories in the village of Peoria Heights. It's true that we've had some big developments on Duryea, luxury apartments, and then other condos on Samuel. But what you're also seeing is a very big interest in sometimes individuals, sometimes developers buying homes and refurbishing them in the village of Peoria Heights as well. So I think this is being addressed already, but it does deserve more attention. It's something we're looking at all the time. I think that we have a very diverse housing stock here. We also have a little bit of an aged housing stock. So hopefully the continued interest will be in purchasing these homes, rehabbing them and selling them or renting them.
Thank you. Brandon?
Let me repeat the question.
Yeah, sure. Let's see, they talk about $40,000 to $50,000 income, and then they talk about $2,000 a month rent, and they talk about $300,000 to $400,000 condos. By the way, the league and I don't necessarily, I'm reading the question, so it's what somebody thought. So the question is, what policy should the village institute to develop homes that the median income would support?
I don't think we have any regulations or ordinances on the books that control rent. I think that's set by the private market and what the homeowner thinks their property is worth, and also what they can get in the market. If the market is producing renters that can afford $2,000, I don't think it's the government's role to come in and say, no, you can only charge $600 or $700. When we first got elected, the village had some parcels of land that we sold with the expectation that single-family housing would be built on these properties. Unfortunately, COVID hit and it wiped those plans out. I don't think the plans are wiped out, but it slowed the progress on those developments. So aside from not holding on to property that the village has that a house could be built on, I think rent is pretty much controlled by the market. And
Thank you. Closing statements. Beth, you are first.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. It has been a joy to serve as village trustee for the last 4 years. It's also been an amazing learning experience for me. I know there's a lot more that I have to learn, but I know there's also a lot more that I have to offer. My heart is here in the village of Peoria Heights, and I know that I can do a wonderful job serving both the residents and businesses of our community.
Thank you. Brandon?
Thanks for joining us this evening. It has been an absolute honor serving this community these last 4 years. I ran for public office to give back to this community that has given so much to me and my family. There is more work to be done, and I am ready to improve upon the successes of the last 4 years. And if re-elected, I will work hard every day advancing the interests of the village of Peoria Heights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you, the audience members, please join me in thanking the candidates for participating in this forum. Appreciate it very much. I'd also like to thank those of you who attended tonight's event, whether you're here in the live audience or by streaming at our league's YouTube channel. I also want to thank the Peoria Heights Library, who is a co-host with the league, the administration and the library board for graciously allowing us to use their great facility tonight. I remind you that the Peoria League participates with the Illinois League in the Illinois Voter Guide. That's a real neat document if you haven't been in that, which is a one-stop shop to find information on how to register to vote, how to your voting detail for that particular race, and also the candidates that are running. You can go to www.illinoisvoterguide.org, illinoisvoterguide.org, to find out what district you live in, to register to vote, or to read survey responses from the candidates. It's you, the audience, and the voters that continue to make our elected officials the best possible to help lead the city of Peoria Heights. Connie.
Thank you. Could I have the mic for just a moment, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Again, I just want to remind everybody to get out and vote. And if you're not doing vote by mail, early voting has started. And April 4th, please make sure you cast your ballot for your candidates that represent you best. And again, a big shout out to the Peoria Heights Public Library. I misspoke earlier. And for all of you again for coming out. And please keep us in mind when elections roll around again. Have a good evening.
Irene always keeps those cards. Well, thank you very much. It's good to be back.
Thank you very much.